Darnell, welcome to the Made Leader podcast. I'm so glad to have you on today.
Thanks, Jen. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Well, for the audience, can you do a quick intro of yourself?
Sure. So my name's Darnell Billups. I work for a Fortune 500 manufacturing company. What I focus on day to day is workforce development, safety, training, and retention, which is my main focus right now.
All right. Well, we're going to get started with a question that, there's a lot of stories around leadership, there's a lot of ideas around leadership. And what would you think is the biggest lie that we tell people about leadership?
Yeah, Jen, I think the biggest lie about leadership is that it'll just come to you with time. Time is useful, obviously, but it doesn't make you a good leader. Experience doesn't necessarily make you a good leader, in my opinion, is actually being more intentional about your leadership. So that's getting mentors, finding coaches, seeking out development within your company, outside your company. That's really what I've noticed in my own leadership journey, but also in the leadership journey of others. They don't really just kind of sit back when it comes to leadership. And lean on the fact that they were chosen to be a leader, but they lean forward and find resources to improve themselves.
Yes. Yeah, because it may not come with experience, right? Unless you are growing, learning, and reflecting, you could keep leading and still keep making the same mistakes, right?
Exactly. It's like, you plant a tree or an herb or what have you. You have to water it. You have to give it sun. There's like time just doesn't make uh, a production come. Like you
Yeah.
need to be more intentional about it.
Yeah. So one of the things that's been coming up. So as I talk to HR professionals and they say, hey, there's this program you should join for growth and development, right? For learning and development. Sometimes leaders, especially new leaders, think of it as, oh, am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong? Do you ever experience that? Like, because what you're saying, and I think we're both kind of growth and development minded, that it's a great thing to get put in a course or put in a training. But have you ever experienced that from the employee's perspective? Like, oh, I'm in a training, I'm in trouble, I'm not doing a good job.
Yes, I've been in that situation 100%. I think what HR has to do and leaders in general, you have to make coaching and development just part of what everyone receives. So that way there's no stigma attached to it. So, my personal opinion, everyone should have a coach. Everyone should have a leadership development program. Some of the world-class companies, as soon as you become a first line supervisor from an individual contributor role, you're put in a training class for first time supervisors. So that allows you to learn technical and kind of emotional intelligence skills, but also it creates a community for you of other first time supervisors. So you kind of will enter that role, if it's done right, with other people like you, kind of going through some of the same entry level leadership challenges that we all face when we get in that position.
Yes. It's such a great thing to go into. And, most organizations don't have that, but the ones that do, I love it. And I'm glad you mentioned just having support coaching at any stage of leadership. It's super helpful. Now, Darnell, I am so curious about your background because you were in the military for a while. And I, and then you went public sector, right? Department of Education, and then
Yep.
now into manufacturing. How has everything translated? Because I have noticed sometimes people in the military have a hard time transitioning from leadership in the military and then leadership in private or public sector. How has it been for you? What has translated and what hasn't?
Yeah, so leadership in the military is different. Kind of public sector leadership is different, and being out in the corporate world is different. But what I found in all three, people are the same. They just want to be recognized. They just want to be seen. So when you're leading people, even if it's across different industries and sectors, I found it to be the same. I'll give an example. When I was at the Department of Education, I was overseeing developers and quality assurance and business analyst folks, and I had no clue about development at that time. But every Monday, all the developers would gather around and talk about Game of Thrones. So this was back when everyone would watch a show on Sunday and then talk about it on Monday. I don't think we're in that world anymore. But I was like, you know what? I need to learn more about Game of Thrones. So I started watching the show, and then I could participate more in kind of, the water cooler talk. And I saw a dramatic change in the acceptance of me on the team and then our performance overall. So I just share that story to say that no matter where you are, people are generally the same and they want to be connected to their leader. And it's up to the leader to find those different avenues to connect with that person. So that's just what my experience has been across the three industries.
So I'm going to press into that real quick.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, did you actually like the show? Because I tried to watch it and I just couldn't do it. Did
Yeah.
you actually enjoy it?
So it's funny because like it was already a very popular show. I tend to not watch very popular shows for whatever reason, but I used it as it was a job thing to me. So I was like, all right, I'm going to sit down and watch it. But I would say probably after 3 or 4 episodes, I really got into it. I watched all the seasons, caught up. I did not like the last season, so I'm not pleased with the last season. But I think that's most Game of Thrones fans.
Well, it's kind of like what Severance is today for people. Everyone's talking about Severance, and I finally
Yeah.
watched an episode or 2 on the plane, so I can at least catch up. But I love that you.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I think you need to like you said, get a few episodes in to be like, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So when you think of your leadership over your career so far, what is your favorite part about leading people?
I would say watching people grow and learn. A lot of times you'll get someone who they may not have the technical skills, they may not have the confidence, but then you work with them for a year or 2 years, and you kind of can see them operate alone. You can see them, take care of a problem that they couldn't before. Always enjoy that, and it makes the job definitely enjoyable. And I always think about when I come home, what are the stories that I tell my wife? And the stories I tell my wife typically are, this person did a good job a year ago, they couldn't do that. And that really made my day. Or someone reached out to me from, 5, 6 years ago or what have you, or in the military, they reached out to me and they got a new job and they thanked me for helping them along the way. Like, as a leader, that's always what you want, and it kind of gives you the fuel because sometimes leadership is hard, and those reach outs kind of give you more fuel. So personally, I always try to reach out to previous leaders that I've had. If something comes up and without their guidance, I wouldn't be able to approach it correctly today. When those things happen, I try to reach out to them to let them know. And I would say that for anybody listening to this, do that, because then it just creates a flywheel of good intent in the community.
Yeah, I love that you said that because it can be lonely and you feel like you're not always doing the right thing. So to see people learn and grow is great. And then also pay it backwards, right? The people who have helped you, and because we've all had
Exactly.
leaders that have touched our lives. And I think that's one thing that can be missed in leadership as well. The impact leaders make on their employees' well-being, right?
Mhm.
Like you're so impactful in the role, and that can be missed because you just feel like because you're a normal human, right? Just trying to do a good job, and we can forget the impact that leaders
Yeah.
make.
It's huge, and all the research. So I have a doctorate in organizational leadership, and the focus I did for my dissertation was around manufacturing supervisors and managers, and I wanted to focus on that because I saw my role as someone in HR and workforce development at a manufacturing company, how pivotal supervisors and managers are to the success of the company, but also the success of the individuals who are in the company. It's literally the number one thing for employee retention, but also for company success.
Yeah, absolutely. What about challenges? Because I mean, it's a challenge. You never know what you're going to get. As soon as you think you've come up with, you're like, I've seen it all. Something else comes your way.
Yeah.
So what? And what you talked about at the beginning, just that continuous improvement that we're all trying to do on ourselves. So what still challenges you?
Wow, what still challenges me? That's a good question. I think one thing that still challenges me, and I'll talk to you about how I try to solve on for that too. Um, I can get very in the weeds of certain things. I can micromanage. Like if we're talking about challenges as a leader,
Yeah.
I think it's part of the military and the consistency, like the discipline, all those things. So I've had to really shift and increase the trust of teammates along the way. So I constantly find myself gripping my hands or biting my tongue of something that I could say because I'm trying to solve the problem. But at the level where I'm at, it's not really my job to solve the problem. Is to develop others to solve that problem. So one thing I typically do of myself, I do a start stop list.
Hmm.
So I'll put a piece of paper line down the middle and I'll say, okay, what are things I can start doing as a leader? And a lot of times you can get feedback from your family, from your teammates, your employees, or your manager, and you can say, okay, this is my start list. But what I find is the more important thing is the stop list. What are things you should stop doing as a leader? And a lot of times, and I've kind of grown through this, is don't micromanage, don't check in daily, like give people trust. So that's where my challenge typically is, but that start stop list really helps remind me.
So do you actually go with a start stop list and you start asking people around you to say, what do you want me to start doing? What do you want me to stop doing? And then
Exactly.
they'll tell you. So your team will
Yeah.
say, do not check in with me every day.
So so that's the thing about feedback as a leader. People aren't going to necessarily be honest with the leader. So I've kind of over time figured out ways to get that information. And I'll sometimes translate that to start stop list if they're not going to give it to me directly. So what I typically do is I'll have a whole group start stop list. And we will just as a group say things we should start doing, things we should stop doing. And then I'll throw in there like, okay, well, what about me? What things should I start doing? What things should I stop doing? And then there's other ways you can find out information like that. Typically, if you ask for advice, if you were the leader, what things would you do in this situation? And so you can start to ferret out how people feel about situations or what they're more comfortable with.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for admitting that you like
Yeah.
the details because we all got stuff, right? It's just
Yeah. Yeah.
it's part of our strengths that kind of can bleed over into opportunities, shall we say. So, Darnell, how do you do it? Can you walk us through like maybe one thing that you do, like when you want to dig into the weeds? Like how do you slap your hand and say no? Like do you have anything practical that other leaders can learn from?
Yeah, so advice I would give to people who micromanage, and I would say most leaders probably are doing this. So if you think you don't, you probably do. I would say um, what I've done is I do check-ins with my team. Check-ins are very important. So you can either do it once a day for 5 or 10 minutes, or you can do it once a week for 30 minutes. But that way, by the time you get to that meeting, you can ask all the questions that you need to ask without it coming off as micromanaging, because that's the point of having a meeting. I call them stand ups. You're having that stand up so you can figure out what's going on, who's blocked, what support they need from other teammates or other areas of the business. So I always know within 24 hours or at the end of the week, I'm going to be able to ask that question. So that's one. I think the other thing is leaders have to be clear about the goals of the organization and your metrics that you're trying to move towards, and that people understand what that is. Because if they understand what the goals and metrics are, and you've also hired, that's the third part, you've also hired the right people, you should be able to check in with them at a set periodic time. You get all your questions answered, and then you're not micromanaging them.
Yeah. So when you talk about daily check-in, 5-minute check-in, so that means that you avoid shooting emails or shooting texts or
Yes.
anything like that, like just checking in or something like that.
Yep.
So you save it all for that daily huddle or the 30-minute weekly, right?
Yeah. And that came from my time overseeing developers because in agile software development, you will have a
Mhm.
stand up and it's 15 minutes every morning or however your teams decides. But the other thing is when you're doing those check-ins, especially in creative work like software development, you lose your concentration. And when you lose your concentration, you're not getting back to the goals and the KPIs of the organization. So you think you're helping as the leader and manager by checking in, but you're actually making your team's performance go down.
I'm laughing because my husband's a programmer by training, and he's like, "Jen, why do you have these meetings on your calendar?
Yeah.
We do our work." Like, they're sitting there, like, so any meeting is a distraction from them actually working, with the exception
Exactly.
of maybe a quick morning huddle or whatever they do, but yeah, they don't do
Yeah.
meetings.
No, they don't do meetings. I was actually reading something earlier today. One suggestion was to put some type of like timer next to a meeting room, and then the leader of the meeting like kind of turns it on, and it'll calculate. You're supposed to put how many people are in the meeting, how long it is, and then it'll calculate how much that meeting is costing you and the company. So as like a mental reminder, a visual reminder of meetings if they're not done well can waste time and money.
Yeah, and we could talk all day about meetings not done well, but we won't
Yeah.
today. So, Darnell, you've been a leader for a while, and I find that there's early experiences that shape how we lead today. And was there anything in your initial leadership experience that maybe changed how the way you looked at leadership now?
Yeah, I would say when I'm asked that question, I always go back to my time at the Naval Academy. And I was executive officer for our summer seminar training program for rising high school seniors who wanted to go to Naval Academy. And there was this huge storm, and all the students who were coming from all over the country were all scattered everywhere. And I was the type of leader who wanted to control a lot of stuff. So I'm like running around ragged trying to do all these things myself. And one of my classmates, he actually stopped me and he's saying, Darnell, like, you can't do this all by yourself. We also want to be part of the solution as your team. Let us help. And so he was right. He was right. And we had, I think, another 3 or 4 weeks for the program. And I had completely changed how I led. I trusted more. I asked questions more. I supported more. And we had a phenomenal summer for the students and for the midshipmen. So that completely changed how I look at leadership as being more collaborative. So I want to know, how can I help you? How can I support you? How can I provide better training versus you should be doing X, Y, or Z?
Yeah. I love that example because it is really the power of feedback. You don't know what you don't know until someone
Yep.
pulls you aside and said, Hey, Darnell, we want to be part of this. And that
Yeah.
sounded like that shifted for you, that you don't have to own it or control it all. And your team wants to be a part of it.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes back to like reaching out to people who give you feedback and thanking them, um, being very gracious, thanking them, and not pushing back. A lot of times, people you'll get one chance probably to give somebody feedback, and if you take it wrong, they're never going to give you feedback again. So it's
Absolutely.
always good when someone's giving you feedback, just be quiet and say thank you.
Fix your face as you're listening to that feedback. Nod and smile. Thank you for the
Yeah.
feedback. Yes. So you talked earlier about frontline leadership and supervisors, especially in manufacturing. So you talk about in your bio about building frontline leadership that sticks. What does that look like for you? What does sustainable frontline leadership look like?
Yeah, for me, frontline leadership is all about getting hiring, developing, training supervisors and managers, especially on the shop floor, who understand transparency, who can build trust, who can build community. Because one thing about being on a production floor is that everybody can see each other. There's no offices, there's no, different places things are happening. Everybody can see what everyone else is doing on the production floor. So as a manager or supervisor, if you treat someone differently, everybody's going to know about it. So it's really important that those leaders make sure that they're building trust with their teams by being consistent with everyone. That's something where if managers and supervisors, like, they need more coaching and more development, is typically around allowing something to fester and not having the courage to say something to someone to have them stop doing something. So that's what I found. What really separates great frontline leadership and making it stick is all about transparency and the courage to say something.
Yeah, because it's particularly difficult. I mean, when you are leading a peer, so people get promoted within a group and then all of a sudden you're leading peers. Is that something that comes up when you look at people getting promoted, that now they were once one of the girls or guys and now they're leading their former peers?
Yeah, absolutely. You see it, and I've seen it in all different, public sector, private sector, and then the military. So typically, in those situations, you want to move the person somewhere else, to a different building, to a different part of the company, what have you. But there's a lot of times you can't do that, and it is someone who's gone from an individual contributor with peers, and then they're becoming everyone's boss. To me, that's where leadership training and development must happen, because you don't know how to navigate something like that. And you really are going to need outside coaching and mentoring to actually deal with something like that. I've personally never been in that situation personally, but obviously I've seen it, and it's challenging. And a lot of times companies will put people in these positions with no support, and then generally they're going to fail, or the company may succeed but the person feels lost and abandoned.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it to where, and I've been in the position of being a peer and getting promoted, but yeah, I've seen it to where, another person that they're now leading wanted that role, right? So there's so many dynamics, and I completely agree. That's when they need the support. How do I navigate this? Kind of like
Yeah.
throwing people to the wolves if you don't give them any of that. Like, good
Right.
luck. So,
Yeah.
how do you notice? So when you talked about effective frontline leaders, building trust, being consistent, right, being fair among employees or their team, transparency, and community, that is sometimes a hard skill. You must have to witness it. You have to see examples of it. So
Mhm.
how would a leader know when they're looking at maybe individual contributors to say, this person, they're ready for a promotion, or they're showing the signs that they can be a successful leader? How do you witness that or observe it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of companies are challenged because typically what happens, you're a technical expert and you're so good at the technical side of things that people just assume you can be a good leader too, which we all know is not true. So typically, if you're looking at individual contributors and kind of who wants to be a leader, I think one, you got to look for people who are voicing it. So if someone is voicing, I want to be a leader, I want to be someone who's leading others, like I think that is a big indicator if they can do it or not. That doesn't mean that people who are quiet and maybe won't be as forward are good, but at least that's one indicator I think you can use. The second thing is put people in cross-functional teams and see how they are. Because at the end of the day, a good leader has good social skills and good emotional intelligence. So if you're putting them in cross-functional teams, you kind of can get to witness that. So I think that's important. And the third thing is, I would say put them in individual contributor roles where you can see them perform and see them solve problems in a group
Mhm.
setting. I think is important. Like one example would be a training role, because a lot of the things about training, communication, understanding what makes someone learn something versus not, those are good traits and attributes for a good leader. So I really follow those three principles.
Yeah, I love what you said about putting them on informal leadership roles, right? So you can see them and move peers and move a cross-functional committee to decision making, or,
Yeah.
lead them in the way of the organization, right? Leading them forward.
Yeah.
It's a great
Yeah. And
idea.
I was gonna say sometimes people figure, oh, actually, I don't want to be a leader. This is hard.
Yes.
Like I just want to, come in, do my job, and go
Yeah.
home.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, Darnell, when you said, yeah, people stepping up to say, I want to lead. My
Mhm.
next question in my head was like, yeah, why? Right? Like, why
Right.
do you want to lead? Because, I joke about it with other people I talk to. It's like, if you would have asked me that when I got promoted, I would have been like, this title, right? Like, it's the status of being a leader. It's more information. It's not, oh,
Right.
I'd
Right.
love to help all these people. And you don't really expect that answer, but like to be able to have part of that, like the people part as a motivator, is super
Yeah.
helpful.
It is. It is. And I think that's where, the leaders who are getting those hands raised, people coming to them, they can ask, like you just said, why? And then coach them on, I don't know if you understand what the leader is, because you probably just see what you think is happening. But let me show you some things you would have to deal with.
Yeah, yeah. A colleague of mine was talking about how brilliant would it be if leaders would talk about hold sessions for individual contributors or emerging leaders. This is what the
Oh
day to
yeah.
day looks like, right? So it's not, they may just say they just go to meetings all day and they just,
Yeah.
whatever they say, but like, here's what I'm navigating right now, right?
Right.
There's relationships, there's engagement on the team, there's my leader. And to give a little insight into what it means to be a leader in that organization, I thought that was a great suggestion because I don't know any organizations
Yeah.
having those honest conversations about what it means to lead.
Yeah, that's true. And then that reminds me of we used to do this thing in the Marine Corps where we would flip roles. So sometimes we would have, say, the battalion commander have one of the Marines follow him or her around all day, and they kind of get to see what the commander does throughout the
Yeah.
day. So I think those opportunities, because again, that person is going to go back and tell all their friends, I saw this. You think that's what happens, but this is actually how it goes.
Ooh, I love that. That's a great idea. Reminds me, tangent here, bear with me. But there's like the kids have like take your kid to work day. And I'm
Mhm.
like, all right, if you want to see me on my computer all day, I mean, you want to watch me virtually train someone, you want to see me coach someone, like, but because they never know what as parents, your child, once they're old enough to comprehend, he won't know what you do unless he sees it in action. But I love that example from the Marine Corps. So, over your 6 years there, where you are now in your company, you've seen leaders be successful and accelerate their career. And you've also seen ones that maybe get stuck or stalled, or maybe just stay at the entry level and can't move past that. You talked about a few of the behaviors that you see in emerging leaders, right?
Mhm.
But what do you see in existing leaders, the ones that can excel their career within the company and those that stay stuck? Are there any common behaviors that you witness?
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is what are the goals of the company? What are the KPIs? Like it goes back to being in a kind of corporate environment. At the end of the day, like that's your performance is really a good chunk of that. But I think there's a concept called PI. So it's performance, image, and exposure. So I think a lot of times when people are stalling, it's probably one of those things. So either your performance is stalling. So in that case, you need to go back with your team. Do they understand what the goals are, and kind of reassessing that and getting them on the right track? Uh, then it's image. So are you late? Do you turn things in on time? Can people trust that what you say is what you're going to do? So if you're not doing those things, your image and throughout the company or your division is not good enough. So that's probably why you're stalling. And then the other thing is the exposure. So are you actually getting out there? Do people know who you are? Do people know what you provided to the company? So if you're stalling, I would say look at your performance, look at your image, and then look at your exposure, and not just to your boss, because that not isn't necessarily exposure per se. It's your boss's boss, it's your boss's peers, like those type of people.
Yeah, I love that. I've never heard that. The pie.
Yeah.
That's good. It's great because it's not just one thing, right? There's little
Mhm.
troubleshooting that you have to do to go along and figure out what that is. So getting to your earlier point, that's why it is so helpful to have some kind of perspective, right? To have either
Right.
HR as your person to say, hey, have you thought about this? Or having someone
Yeah.
external that can help you. Um, so let's just say, I'm sure you do a lot of mentoring inside and outside of your organization. You seem like that kind of guy that is helping of young leaders. But if you could have coffee with an early leader in your organization tomorrow, what advice would you give them? Like we'll do a start stop, right? So
Yeah.
in your language, we'll start with start. What would you get them to start doing?
Yeah. I think the thing I would get them to start doing is think about all the things that got you to the point you're at, and I would list those things out. And then I would find mentors and sponsors. I would start finding mentors and sponsors to help you build out what do you need to do now with the new position that you're in or the position that's next for you. Because that's the important thing. There's a book out there. It's called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and
Mhm.
that's really the big premise. And a lot of people miss this. I missed this for a long time, but that's what because if you want to get promoted, people need to see you in the next position, not in the position you're in. So I would say start mapping out what got you here because that's what you should be proud of but start finding mentors to help you build out what are the next skill sets, what are the next attributes you need.
Gotcha. What about Okay, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to push you a little bit on this one because I'm
Yeah.
going to stop. I'm thinking of my early leaders, right? Some of these people that they can't even envision their next role yet, right? They're just trying to master or let's just get a handle on their current role. I love that
Correct.
you're thinking a couple of steps ahead because I think that is very important. Is there anything that so they're going there going, okay, I got here through hard work, through top performance, through being an expert in my field. What would they do for those people to start doing?
Yeah, I think for that person who's already performing well, is that your question? If they're already performing well?
They're performing well, but it gets to your what got you there won't get you
Yeah,
here, right? Well, what got you here won't get you there. There you go, said it right.
yeah,
But they're not to the stage where they're going to think about mentors and sponsors in the next level, right? So let's just say
right,
someone becomes a manager and then their next step's director. They're like,
right.
I just need to I need to get manager
Yeah,
under control. What would they start doing if mentoring or sponsorship feels too far out of the realm right now?
yeah, that's a great question. So I mentor a lot of college and early career people, and I will agree with you. They don't necessarily understand mentorship and sponsorship. So it would be definitely hard for folks like that to get that. But what I would say is just open up YouTube, find people like Jen Arnold on YouTube giving out information, get all the books you possibly can on your industry, on leadership, and read them. Start a book club. If you don't want to talk to people above you, talk to people who are your peers. Start a I want to be a manager one day book club. And if you say, oh, I can't find people who want to be managers, well, find different friends or find different people because you need folks who are kind of on that road with you to partner up with. And then kind of create your own map, I guess, for that. One thing I loved about the Marine Corps, and I don't necessarily see it in other areas like government or public companies, we all had a reading list that came out every year, the Marine Corps reading
Mm.
list. So from private, as soon as you're like out of boot camp, all the way up to the 4-star general in charge of the Marine Corps, they're supposed to have a list of books that's assigned to them by their grade.
Hmm.
And that shows that, you have to be a continuous learner and a reader to be a leader.
I love that, Darnell. That is amazing. God, that kind of continuous improvement. And everyone's reading the same thing. That gets you some
Mhm.
shared language. That's brilliant. And there's tons of resources out there. Definitely check out the YouTube channel. There's
It's
there's
out
so
there.
Information's not the problem, right? We've got so much
Yeah.
information and being a sponge for that information. All right, thank you for that. What about
Yeah.
stopping? What should these early leaders stop doing?
Yeah, early leaders, I think, should stop just thinking about themselves. I know that that's kind of a broad, but think about how you can help others next to you, how you can help your boss, how you can help the company, how you can help your community. So I would say stop focusing on yourself and see kind of what else is out there for you to learn and experience.
But I love that. I love that, thinking outside of yourself because that's leadership, right? It's not all about you. It's about trying to lift everyone else up and helping other people, creating value. I love that. So, Darnell, where can people find out more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, so you can search Darnell Billups on LinkedIn. Also have a personal website, so darnellbillups.com. Also, you can reach me by email. So it's darnell.e as an echo dot billups at gmail.com. And I'm always open for conversations about leadership, workforce development, and especially retention.
I will link all of that up in the show notes. But Darnell, is there anything that you want to say? Maybe I didn't ask you that you want the listeners to know.
Uh, I think this was great. I had a lot of fun talking through this with you, Jen. I think the biggest thing I would say is, go find a mentor. There's a lot of different resources out there. Even if you just Google mentor in the local area, you'll probably find something. There's a lot of great mentorship resources out there, and a lot of people in my shoes and even higher who want to kind of give back to people who are just starting out as emergent leaders. This is the biggest piece of advice I probably didn't get early on in my career, and I just wish someone would have told me. So I would say go find a mentor now if you don't have one.
Great advice. Well, Darnell, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Jen.